I arrived home earlier than expected that night. The business trip had ended 2 days ahead of schedule, and instead of staying at the hotel, I decided to take the late train home and surprise my family. I imagined my wife smiling when she saw me at the door, and my son complaining that I had returned, before bringing him the souvenir I had promised. But when I pulled into the driveway, something felt wrong. The house was completely dark. It was nearly midnight, and not a single light was on. My wife's car was in the driveway, but the curtains were closed and the front porch looked cold and empty. For a moment I wondered if everyone had gone to bed early. Then I noticed a faint light moving through the window. Near the laundry room, I quietly opened the front door. The house was silent except for the steady sound of a washing machine. I walked down the hallway and saw my 16-year-old son, Daniel, sitting on the floor beside the washing machine. He was wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants. His eyes were red and several piles of clothes surrounded him. He was carefully separating white shirts from dark clothes, as if he had been doing it for hours. "Daniel," I asked. He jumped and quickly stood up. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came home early," I said. "What are you doing?" He looked at the floor. "Laundry at midnight. It needed to be done." I noticed something strange. The clothes were not ours. Some were much smaller, and several pieces looked worn and stained. There were children's socks, tiny shirts, and a faded blanket with a cartoon bear on it. "Whose clothes are these?" I asked. Daniel became quiet. "They belong to some people who need help." "What people?" He swallowed and turned back toward the washing machine. "It's nothing." I knew my son well enough to understand that something was wrong. Daniel had always been kind, but lately he had become distant. He spent more time outside, stopped asking me for money, and often came home late. I assumed it was normal teenage behavior. I thought he wanted independence now. Standing in the dark laundry room, I realized I had not truly asked what was happening in his life. I sat beside him on the floor.
"Tell me," I said.
For several minutes he said nothing. Then he opened a small basket and showed me the clothes inside. "Do you remember Mrs. Carter?" he asked. I thought for a moment. She was an elderly woman who lived 3 streets away. Her husband had died years ago, and she sometimes brought us homemade cookies during the holidays. "Yes," I said. "She lost her apartment last month." What Daniel nodded. Her rent went up. She couldn't afford it. She's staying at the community shelter now. I was shocked. I had no idea she has 2 grandkids. Daniel continued. "Their mother left a long time ago, and Mrs. Carter has been taking care of them. The shelter has a laundry room, but the machines are broken, so I bring their clothes home after everyone is asleep. You've been doing this alone for a few weeks." "Why didn't you tell us?" Daniel looked embarrassed. "Because Mom is already worried about money and you were away. I didn't want to make things harder." I looked around the room again. The piles of clothing suddenly meant something completely different. My son had not been wasting his nights. He had been carrying bags of dirty clothes across the neighborhood and washing them in secret. Then I noticed a small notebook beside him. "What's this?" He quickly reached for it, but I opened it before he could stop me. Inside were handwritten notes. Laundry detergent, $12. Soap, $4. School supplies, $18. Groceries, $27. Bus fare, $6. The numbers continued across several pages. "Daniel," I said quietly, "where did you get the money?" He looked away. "I sold my gaming console."
My heart sank. "You sold the console you saved for 2 years to buy."
He nodded. "They needed food more than I needed games." I didn't know what to say. For months I had been teaching my son about success. I told him to study hard, choose a good career, save money, and build a comfortable life. I believed those lessons would prepare him for the future. But sitting beside him in that dark laundry room, I realized he had learned something I had forgotten. Success was not only about what you earned. It was also about what you were willing to give. I placed my hand on his shoulder. "You shouldn't have carried this by yourself," I said. I didn't know who else would help. That sentence stayed with me. I looked at the washing machine. It was still running. The small clothes turned slowly behind the glass. Then I stood up. "Where is the detergent?" Daniel pointed to the shelf. I picked up a bottle. "What are you doing?" He asked. "Helping you." "You don't have to, I know." I said. "I want to." For the next 2 hours we worked together. We washed clothes, folded blankets, and packed the clean items into bags. Daniel told me about Mrs. Carter's grandchildren. The older boy, Ethan, was 11 and loved drawing the younger girl. Lily was 7 and had asthma. Mrs. Carter often skipped meals so the children could eat. I felt ashamed that I lived only a few streets away and knew nothing about their situation. At 3 in the morning, my wife walked into the laundry room. She had woken up and noticed the lights. When she saw us sitting among piles of clothes, she looked confused. What is happening? Daniel tried to explain, but his voice broke. My wife listened without interrupting. When he finished, she walked over and hugged him. Then she started folding clothes. No one spoke for a while. The washing machine continued its steady rhythm, and for the first time that night, the house no longer felt dark. The next morning, we drove to the community shelter. Mrs. Carter was sitting near the entrance with her grandchildren. She looked tired, but when she saw the clean clothes, her eyes filled with tears. "You did all this?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "You shouldn't have," she said. He smiled. "I wanted to." Mrs. Carter held his hand. "I thought people had forgotten us." Daniel looked at her and said something that made me proud. "No one should feel forgotten." On the drive home, I kept thinking about those words. Over the next few weeks, our family began helping more. My wife organized donations from neighbors. I contacted a local repair company, and they agreed to fix the shelter's laundry machines. Daniel created a small collection box at school. For clothes and supplies, people responded. Some donated food, others brought blankets, shoes, and school materials. A local restaurant offered free meals once a week. What started with one teenager washing clothes at midnight slowly became a community effort. Months later, Mrs. Carter found affordable housing. Her grandchildren returned to a stable routine, and the shelter's laundry room was working again. Daniel never asked for recognition. He did not want his picture in the newspaper. He did not want an award when his school offered to honor him. He politely refused. "I only did what anyone should do," he said, but I knew that was not true. Many people had seen the same problems and walked away. My son had chosen to act one evening. I found him sitting on the porch. "Do you miss your gaming console?" I asked. He laughed. "Sometimes I can buy you another one." He shook his head. "Not yet." "Why not?" He looked toward the neighborhood. "Because I learned something better." What? He smiled. "Helping someone feels better than winning a game." I sat beside him, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I had come home early expecting to surprise my family. Instead, my son surprised me. I thought I was returning home to teach him how to become a successful man, but in one dark laundry room, surrounded by clothes that did not belong to us, he taught me what success truly meant. It was not the size of your house. It was not the money in your account. It was not the car in your driveway or the job written on your business card. Real success was noticing someone who had been forgotten. It was helping when no one was watching. It was giving without expecting anything in return. That night, I arrived home early and found my son doing laundry at midnight. But what I truly found was a young man with a heart bigger than anything I had ever taught him to build. And from that night forward, whenever I saw the laundry room light glowing after midnight, I no longer wondered why. I knew that someone was being reminded that they had not been forgotten.